Hi there, this is John Allen Simon, and I'm here today with Amanda Eliasch, and we're going to be talking about a number of things. And first and foremost, we're going to be talking about her new play, As I Like It, which is just opened here in Los Angeles at the MACHA Theater in West Hollywood. And I happen to be the director of the play, but my background was in journalism. So Amanda asked if I would do this little chat with her, and I was delighted to do so, because every time I meet with Amanda, I both learn new things and I actually end up laughing quite a bit. And I hope that'll be your experience this afternoon as we chat with her about her life and her play. Amanda, let's start by talking a little bit about the genesis of the play. Your father was a journalist.
Yes.
And you had a very tangential relationship with him growing up because he left the house. But the play actually found its genesis in a conversation you had with him when you were 22. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I met him at 22. I had never met him before, and I met him at Heathrow Airport. He rang me, and basically I had written to him when I was 12 years old and given him all my telephone numbers, which luckily stayed the same for the next 10 years. And so he rang up and asked me to go and see him. And then at about the age of 38, he rang me up one day and he said, I expect 5,000 words from you by the end of the weekend. And I said, but I don't write except poetry. And he said, well, I expect you to do it because you've got good DNA for writing and I want to see if you can. So I thought I would write the most outrageous things that I could to him, only for him never to ask me again. And that's what I did, really. And I wrote it very quickly. And he liked it a lot. And the first day he said to me, when he read it, he said, rang me at 12 o'clock and said, I absolutely love it. And by 5 o'clock he said, and you can't do anything with it because it's outrageous and we all have to be dead. And so that's what's happened. When they're dead, his ashes are sitting on my drawing room mantelpiece. And that's why I'm doing it now. And
you had been writing poetry before that.
Yeah.
And publishing poetry.
Yes, I wrote a lot. I mean, I started writing when I was very, very young, and I worked actually for an estate agent who used to make me write all his brochures. And he used to like the way I wrote them. And I used to write the funny one, and then I used to write the serious one. And it sounds weird to just start like that, but I mean, I just did it because he would ask me to do it. And then I started again writing for Italian Vogue because she had done a book on British artists, and so I wrote a diary to accompany it. And I sort of told the truth by accident again about the artists in England, and they published it. It was a bit tongue-in-cheek. I tarted it up a bit so nobody got offended. But that's how I started writing, really. Because I don't consider, unless you've been to Oxford or Harvard, as you have, that you should write. But in any case, I started and I like doing it.
Well, you've really got, I think, a gift for writing, and you're really a very natural wit and conversationalist. And I think that there's so much humor in the piece that it's easy to kind of overlook in this play some of the sadder elements.
Yeah, the tragedy,
the kind of loneliness at the depth of it. You had kind of an unusual upbringing. Your mother was an opera singer.
Yes.
And you didn't have much money as a child.
No.
What was your childhood like? You kind of got sent off to boarding school.
I think I was lucky to be sent off to boarding school, really. My mother was given £10 a week by my grandparents, who were quite well off. I mean, he was a film director. My grandmother was a concert pianist. And my mother basically was sort of a bit in disgrace. She had 2 children under the age of 22. And they told her off and put her in the gardener's cottage, as you do in England, and and gave her 10 quid a week. And of course she was short of money, because even in 61, it's not very much money. and she was always struggling. But she was very clever with money, and she managed to sort of make it into elastic, because I was quite impressed by her. You know, she bought me a pony when everybody got a pony, and it was a pedigree pony. I don't know how the hell she got that, but she did. She managed to send me to pony club camp. She managed to get me into one of the best girls' schools in England, because she decided to teach, because that was a way of paying school fees. So she was a creative woman, and she was an incredible teacher of singing. Not just a beautiful opera singer, which I still consider to be one of the best opera singers I've ever listened to. She was actually an amazing teacher. And she would always say that I was incredible when I wasn't. I mean, I'd like to have been, but I wasn't. And so she wasn't the bitch that I've sort of made her out to be. She was actually much kinder. But from my perspective at the time, she was a very difficult woman, because she would overreact. But that's the only criticism I can actually label at her. But I tried to write it as I saw her then.
Yeah,
not
it's
as
very
she
much,
is now. And
yeah.
actually, in retrospect, she's an incredible person. She coped. You know, she did her whole life, and she brought 2 children up in very difficult circumstances.
And it gave you kind of a lifelong love of opera and classical music.
Yes.
That's very, I think you weave into the play very nicely, very cleverly. I'm not, my background, I was a music critic for a number of years, but I wrote about jazz and rock. Yes. And I don't know that much about classical music. I know modern classical
yes.
music. And I just was really delighted by the pieces you selected and the way that you presented them in the play. Was opera kind of for you what rock and roll was for most teenagers and kids, like an escape from parents and from growing up in school?
Well, everything, even pop music, comes basically, you know, Bach was a pop star, really, and Mozart too. You know, we look at things very differently now, but we forget the roots. And of course, at their time, they were rock stars, and they were incredible. They ruled Europe, and there weren't so many. There were lots and not so many. And even if we listen to rock music or pop music now, you can hear the same chords. They might not know they're doing it, but they're copying Bach on a regular basis, and they're copying Mozart a lot. So what I tried to do with this play was integrate this music, and I tried it with an opera singer, which was great in England, but her name was Susan Park. She was an incredible opera singer, but she was too good. And so I wanted to bring in, say, a folk singer, which is why I used Lisa Zane, and see if it softened the opera. Because when you're saying harsh words about your life, which are very real, something about opera
it's artificial.
Yes, it's artificial, and you know, they're using their voice correctly, and sometimes correctly isn't as interesting as when you're making mistakes. And in this case, you know, she's singing it too low. We know she's singing it too low. I think it was criticized today in the Los Angeles Times that it was too low. Well, yes, it is too low, but it's still incredibly beautiful. And Bellini is amazing, whether you're singing it correctly or not. It's just a wonderful pieces of music. And so I was absolutely, it was imperative for me to interpret my words with music, because that's how I think. You know, I don't think really in words. I really think with music behind my words, and so that's why I did it.
Now, your son Charles Eliasch
Yes.
is also in the play. He plays. The play, for those of you who haven't seen it, which I'm going to assume is most of the people watching this video at the moment, it's in the form pretty much of a monologue by an actress playing the woman, which is really a very thinly disguised version of yourself, or is yourself.
Yes.
And the young man, who is a servant, but he's also other things in the play, because it's kind of a surreal setting, which is one of the things that attracted me to the piece. But your son Charles plays the young man, and he sings opera in it, and he's 19 years old and has an absolutely amazing voice and is a wonderful pianist too. Did you see this as something you wanted to do for him? Is that one of the reasons you did the play?
I think everything has to come down to helping your children. I mean, why would I tell the whole of my life? Well, it's no different from anybody else's life. We've all got tragedy in our lives and everything else. I really wanted to help my sons. If I could buy a football team for the other one, I would. I think the most interesting thing is to work with your children. It brings you closer, you help them develop, you teach them loads of things. And of course, there are very few children that can play the piano and sing as well as he can. I'm sure there are many at music schools, but you know, they're not going to be my sort of pet. You know, they're not going to behave the way I want them to. And Charlie will do all these things. And plus, he's very eccentric. And he has an interesting look, which I'm sure you would agree with. And he loves, I think he loves acting as much as he loves singing. So he was an ideal choice. And I don't think he listens to the words that I say at all. Remember, he's been listening to them since he was about 6 years old. I don't think he's shocked or has any idea what I'm even saying, really. And so he was very happy to do the piece. I did worry about it. I worried about the content, but he says he can't even hear the words. He's heard them so many times. So,
yeah, you and Charles, I don't know that much about your relationship with Jack. I haven't observed it as much,
yes.
But you have a really unique kind of relationship, don't you?
Well, we do really, and he expects me to be able to sing all his arias with him. And you know, I'm not a trained. I'm trained as a musician, but I'm not a trained opera singer. And he gets terribly cross when I can't sing very well or I'm not performing well. So you know, really, he would like me to be at music school with him, and then he could practice with me every day and nag me to death. And so why not do this piece with him? It had been sitting in a cupboard for a very long time. And I rang up my teacher at RADA, who I hadn't spoken to for 20 years, and I bullied him to do it, called LYALL Watson. And even though we don't speak at the moment, because, you know, I never speak to people half the time, you know, I'm always rowing with them. At the moment we're rowing. I'm sure it'll be fine in another 6 months, and that's how I am. And he helped me turn it into play form, because, you know, plays are complicated things. And you don't want to bore people to death. You have to be quickly moving, especially with a monologue. And I suppose the reason I wanted to do a monologue, there aren't really good plays for women over 40, as you're aware, making films. And there are no good film parts, very few. And basically I wanted the woman, as women are now aging so slowly through hormones and Botox and all this stuff, I mean, they're looking remarkable at the age of 50. I thought that it'd be fun to turn it into a play and put in a 46-year-old woman around that age.
Well, it's a very challenging part, because
yes.
It's pretty much on stage for a whole over an hour.
Well, I think that's what you wanted, isn't it? You said she couldn't come off. So if the actress comes off, you know there's something seriously wrong.
And it's kind of in the form of a stream of consciousness too. So the
yes.
associations are very personal, and you can't learn that kind of thing by rote. Talk a little bit about casting the play here with Elizabeth Karr in
yes.
the part of the woman.
Well, Elizabeth Karr is obviously not an obvious choice, because she looks far too serene for the part, number one. I mean, she's completely different from me. I suppose I was working with her, producing the play, and I like families. Whatever happens in a family, it gets solved. And we were able to solve all the boring bits, like the paperwork and everything else, which took an awful lot of time to do a play in Los Angeles, believe it or not, much more so than in London. And I couldn't bring over the cast from London, which I'd wanted to do. And equity were being very tricky. So I originally was persuaded to cast Beth Broderick, who's an amazing actress. And I don't know, it wasn't family. And they altered my script. And I hate my script really altered that much, as you well know.
We writers get upset with that.
They put in things that I didn't want to talk about, and I had specifically asked not to be talked about. And so I sat with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth had been sitting on the sofa pretending to be me, and I said, oh, why don't you just do it? And we are opposites, but she has some sort of charm, naivety about her portrayal that's sort of interesting, because she can be childlike, which I can be too, and it's fun to work with friends. And they matched. The other thing is that I'm very visual, so when I like to cast something, I see the whole picture. So I cast my son, obviously, he's the #1. So then I really wanted Lisa Zane to do it. And Lisa didn't want to take on the amount of work. It was a huge amount of work, and she said, Amanda, I can't do it. And so I persuaded her to sing, and Elizabeth just sort of fitted in. I don't think she knew what she was fitting into.
It was a good choice. She's a wonderful actress. I've directed her in 2 productions here, in Oscar Wilde's Woman of No Importance and An Ideal Husband as Victorian Noir, and both have been critics' choices. So she did a great production of Uncle Chekhov here as Yelena.
Yes.
So it was a good intuitive choice on your part.
But obviously Yelena is much more her than this, and but I think it's good to stretch people, and why not do it? You know, why not? Why give it to someone else? Why not take the opportunity to do things? You can only learn from them and grow from them, and I believe that's what she will do. And she will get other parts because she's a very good actress from it. So why not do it? And that's why I did it, really.
Well, you talk a little bit about your grandfather in the play, and you mentioned him here today, Sidney Gilliat, who was an amazing screenwriter and director. He'd worked with Alfred Hitchcock and Carol Reed, who not that many people remember in this country, but was my father's favorite film of all time. Carol Reed did Odd Man Out, and Night Train to Munich was your grandfather's script. Did that give you a great love of film too? I know that you and your ex-husband got involved with London Films, which had been a company he'd been involved with, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, I was 4 doors away from, actually 3 doors away from my grandfather growing up, and I was the lucky one because my brother was sent off to school. I was a weekly boarder, and my cousin was 5 years younger than me. So I was brought up very much by my grandfather and grandmother, and so of course he wanted to talk about his films, and probably his daughters didn't. They probably listened when they were young, but you know, they were busy, and so I would always be talked to, and he would take me off to his study, which was full of papers, mess, a dog sitting in one corner. He didn't really like dogs when he was younger, but towards the end he had a dog called Hiccup. You know, he talked to me about everything from tomato growing, which he loved, to rugby, which he thought that I should love, which of course I didn't, and film. And he would talk to me about his scripts, tell me little anecdotes. It was quite an intellectual upbringing because every Sunday they would discuss the latest things going on in the world, and then they would talk about film, and it was an interesting upbringing. I wasn't intellectual. I have intellectual pursuits. So I was made to do the washing up like Cinderella. But of course I listened and got loads of inspiration to write, to see music. If they had musicians in the house on a regular basis, you know, there were concerts practically, I'd say once a month in the house in Wiltshire. And my grandmother would support various composers, pianists, and we'd have to have them to stay. So I used to live under the piano and listen to them. And I suppose that's how I got the idea of putting music through words, because that's how I'd seen them. I probably was a poet from a very young age, although I didn't really do it, because I remember writing, I'd say 8 years old, 9 years old. I was always scribbling, but I was scribbling in wallpaper then, and now I scribble in books and computers, so it changes, doesn't it?
Well, that's one thing we have in common, is I wrote poetry for quite a while and did tours in the Midwest, reciting it and doing things. And
well, exactly.
Still right.
That's why you're doing the job, isn't it?
Still doing these.
That's why you're doing it. You just went to Harvard, and I went to Stoner, which is.
Well, you know, it's good to have that kind of background to kind of understand literature. I was lucky. I went to Chicago public high schools. My parents weren't wealthy, but I was lucky enough to get a scholarship and get in, and a whole new world opens up when you discover really good writing and things that speak to you, speak to your soul.
I think so. I mean, I didn't read actually until I was 9 years old, and my mother was horrified. So she got me all these Georgette Heyer novels, and I just sort of consumed them all in about 5 days. And then I started reading Thomas Hardy. I thought that was a natural progression, which of course is a bit weird, really, going from Georgette Heyer to Thomas Hardy. But I love The Mayor of Casterbridge, and I suppose Far From the Madding Crowd I love too. I also liked Dylan Thomas a lot. But I wasn't very varied. I would consume one author, and I probably still would. I find it very difficult.
That's how I read too. I'll read everything of a writer. Like I just made a film based on a Philip K. Dick science fiction novel, and when I discovered Philip K. Dick, I read, you know, everything he wrote, which is quite voluminous. And I'm going to be very interested to see what you think about the book that I gave you as our opening night little gift.
Exactly.
I gave you Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer, because I know...
But that's a new author for me.
That's a new author for you, and he wrote a lot. It'll keep you very busy if you fall in love with Miller, which
I should do.
Which I think
it's a very interesting thing to do, is to move on from the English authors. But I was never a fan of, say, Dickens, which everybody else is, and I should be, and I tried, and my sons love. But I don't know, perhaps I wasn't clever enough. It does take a certain academic ability to read Dickens.
Well, and also sometimes you start with the wrong thing, I think.
Yes.
If you start with the kids' Dickens, like Oliver Twist and some of them, you may not get to the more interesting ones, like Bleak House or Our Mutual Friend. You just get discouraged and don't find the really adult versions.
Everybody in my house loves Jane Austen. I mean, they absolutely love Jane Austen, and I never did. I think I was just being bloody difficult. You know how people are. I think I was just being impossible, because of course I think if I read it now, I'd love Trollope, and they all love Trollope. So basically, you know, I read, let me see, Philippa Gregory instead of reading Trollope, or I was impossible. But now, of course, I will read all these things. I have more time.
Now, your play is not intellectual at all. It's very emotional, it's very visceral, and you talk a lot about relationships with men, and I guess I have to ask you, it's kind of unsatisfied in the play as to where you've gotten with men and your attitude towards them.
I think it's a work in progress.
And it may be for your whole life, and it may be for everyone's life, but tell me a little bit about how you think about men. There's a line in it, men were sent there to torture you.
Well, you know, you have to think that when I wrote this, it was 10 years ago, and I had very different attitude towards men then than I do now. And the men in my life were very different, and they've changed enormously since then. I did think that they were there for torture only, and now they're more companionship. You know, I'm older, and I'm a bit, well, I'm not much more tolerant, but I am considerably more than I was 10 years ago, when I used to slam the door on a regular basis in their face. I think maybe I whine on too much about that, or maybe the actress could do, which I hope that you stop Elizabeth from doing, because actually, if I had gone through life whining as the play is written, it could be done with humor, or it can be done with irony. I would say I would speak it with irony, and maybe laugh at myself being absolutely ghastly, because I was. And I think that my behavior was as bad as theirs.
Well, did writing the play give you a little bit more perspective on yourself and your life? You said you wrote it as kind of an exercise to prove to your father that you could, but...
I would say that it was an exercise of, it was sort of an exorcism of all the dreadful feelings I've ever had. And of course, once you've written them all down, they're no longer of any interest at all. And I had to then reopen it all when I started working with LYALL. And the first play we wrote, Flashback, Fast Forward, I showed a great friend of mine at the time called Tim Willis, and he said, this absolutely can't be shown. So I said, oh no, I have to go back and write another one. So I went off with LYALL for another holiday where we were dieting at the same time, because I made him go on a diet because he'd been very groovy when he was 40, and now he was sort of much older and he didn't look so groovy, so I had to tart him up, which I liked.
Was he the groovy guy with Love and Hate on the back of the jacket?
Of course, it's him. And I had a bit of a crush on him in 1988, and now we're looking at 2008. He adapted the whole play and helped transform it and we then decided to write one about drama schools, because we both had so many stories to tell about them. But of course they've been edited down. Of course it's changed a bit, because to have 20 pages of drama school and you have never been to one, it would be absolutely terrible.
Although here in LA, a lot of people have been to drama
school. Well, exactly. But there, basically, I think we can cope with 5 pages of that sort of boring drama. And it took me at least 24 auditions to get into the worst drama school. So actually, I got into... But what's funny in life, you know, is funny, I suppose, is that, say, RADA have me on as their alumni. Well, I went there for a summer workshop, so it's okay that I went to the worst one. And it's okay, I can cope with it.
You describe yourself in the play as a socialite.
I hate that word, but everybody describes me as a socialite. I hate this word because, well, the actual word of socialite actually is a good thing. You know, you're helping people for social welfare and goodness in various arts. But of course, it also looks like you go out an awful lot. And I hate that idea that I go out an awful lot doing meaningless things. I take the piss out of myself when I say that, you know, I go to my functions, I have my hair done, I might do my hair all day and then never go out, which is also true, because often I don't go out at all for days on end. I like to be on my own too. So I don't know what it really means. They like to say it, you know, the press like to say that I'm a socialite.
It's interesting because I think here in America,
I'm sociable.
we think of women who are socialites. Of course, we think that they're well provided for or have the means to live a very nice lifestyle and not do anything. But I think you are probably among the most active whirlwind of human beings I've ever met.
Well, I am.
You're a photographer, you're an editor, you're...
well, I'm a fashion editor too.
Fashion editor.
And they never stop nagging me.
You're an artist, it seems like you always have a project going, and I always find out about another project you have going. Tell us a little bit about some of the other things you do.
I mean, I started off as a photographer. When I left drama school, I was telephoned by a girlfriend, and she made me go and be helpful in the darkroom. And I got completely addicted to printing. I couldn't take a picture at the time. And then I went to work for Bob Carlos Clark. I didn't work for him, but he taught me. And Bob Carlos Clark was an incredible photographer who sadly died. And he taught me how to print, how to take pictures. And then I went to work for Michel Comte, who is a wonderful photographer who works for the magazines. And he took me actually to Italian Vogue and to meet Franca Sozzani there. And I then turned it into a book doing the British artists. So I sort of love that journey, and I can do many things. You know, I like, my mother used to say that I was, that I should be careful of this, but the truth is I really like taking photographs, I really like writing, I really like fashion. I was buying fashion at the age of 18 months, believe it or not. And I probably have more black dresses than anybody in Los Angeles. I'm ashamed to say.
Maybe the world.
Maybe the world. I'm ashamed to say this because, of course, we're living in a terrible recession. But the fact is I love clothes. I've always loved them. And I would say I like them as much as reading Thomas Hardy. It's equal passion. And I wish I didn't have a sort of feeling towards it, but I really love clothes, and I like sewing them as well and making them, which, you know, I chopped up dresses for the costumes. I sort of like creating new things and trying out new things.
The costumes are really very interesting, and as I like it, talk a little bit about what you were trying to achieve,
well, you know,
or what the feeling was you wanted from them.
I want them to look like funeral gnomes, basically, because I was always told, why are you looking
What is a funeral gnome?
Well, you know, a gnome is sort of a cute thing in the garden running around, a fairy,
yes.
A funeral fairy. I've only ever worn black. I will only ever wear black, and I might have a hint of color, and that will be on my lips. I really don't like any color, except maybe in my bedroom, which could be shocking pink. So it was obvious for me to do the clothes because it's so vitally important for me. But of course, the girls look not so good in black, and I have to add color to suit their different complexions. You know, in the case of Elizabeth, she looks good with actually lilacs and browns, and I couldn't get my head around it. I found it very difficult to deal with brown. Brown, my worst color. How can I have a girl wearing brown? But you know, you adapt, and you have to learn to change things, and she did a bit. I think she put a blonde streak in her hair, which is quite something for Elizabeth. And we tried to adapt to make the piece more friendly to everybody.
Now, you live in 3 different places,
yes.
3 different countries, not all at the same time,
yeah.
obviously. You have a home in London, one
yeah.
here and one in Paris.
A man in every country.
And a man in every country. At least one man in every country, I'm yes. beginning to think.
Well, not really.
And you've done the play in London, now
yes.
you've done it in Los Angeles. I have 2 questions for you. First of all, what you're thinking of doing further with the play, but I also wanted to ask how you feel about Los Angeles, what brought you here, and what you like particularly about Los Angeles as opposed to the other places. Yeah, the other places you live. Well,
I like 2 things. I like hot weather and I like cities. So you can't go and sunbathe in New York, I don't think, and it really doesn't work. And you definitely can't sunbathe in London. I really love both cities, but Los Angeles has a fantastic, I suppose, joie de vivre in a way. You go down the street, and whatever anyone might say about its superficiality, it's not so superficial. I'm walking down the street and I'm offered a job as fashion editor. Well, I'm not walking down the street offered fashion editor in London, so it's a place of opportunity. I go into the theatre, I said, do you want to look at my play? In London, it's an amazingly long job. In Los Angeles, she says, yes, of course, I'll have your play. And she lets me do it. It's a place of opportunity if that's what you want to do. It's also a place where you have to be rich, and or you could be had. You know, it's got many different aspects to it that are very interesting. It's also got a lot of culture. It's got an incredible, a lot of theatre, which I was surprised and happy to find. It's not just film, and people get the wrong opinion of this city. It has everything here. And I also like, you know, I like downtown LA. My son, for instance, went downtown LA on Christmas Day to see all the people lying on the pavements because he felt like he should go and help. It's an incredibly diverse city, and that's why I like it. It's breathing, and I like breathing cities. People say it's a velvet coffin, but it isn't really. It's if it is, it's a charming velvet coffin. I like it. And I also like the coffin in Paris, which is definitely a bit of a coffin too. Maybe I like coffins, actually. My son looks like he's a vampire. I think I like things that come out of coffins, and LA will do. I like old Hollywood film stars. I like black and white movies. I like silent movies, is why I like The Artist.
And we opened the play with the lead character coming out of a skull, don't we?
Yes, I love skulls, and I've loved them since I was a child. I still love them, and you know, I will always have a skull in my house.
Is that the pirate in you or the vampire
I
or
think
both?
so. I think I'm a vampire.
And what's the future of the play after Los Angeles? Do you know yet? Are you thinking about taking it elsewhere?
Well, I really think that I need to rewrite some aspects of it if I was to take it to New York, only to make it more modern. Mm-hmm. There's some of it that I think the Los Angeles Times are right, that it's a tiny bit dated, and that's because I wrote it 10 years ago. And of course, the world, they're right in picking it up. The world moves on so quickly, and things that we think are attractive then change, humor changes. And I should just slightly tweak it so that it works well. I like the format, but I think that some of it should change a little bit.
And in fairness, the Los Angeles Times also said it was witty. Yes,
well, it will be witty. It can be witty. That's not the problem. They did say I was witty in it, but it has many. I think really it's also an education about opera. Perhaps if you hated opera, you might like this play. Let's hope you do.
No, I don't think you have to like opera at all. In fact, I think it's a great introduction to opera.
Yes.
It really has been, for me to some extent. I mean,
because you didn't know much about opera.
I didn't know much about opera at all. Just Wagner, really,
yes.
who I was attracted to, and a few more modern things like Philip Glass and
yes.
John Adams, those
yes.
kinds of things. But yeah, I think the opera works really lovely, and your son Charles has just such an amazing resonant voice.
Yes, I love his voice.
Yes.
He was a countertenor, and to change, it was a huge, big deal to change. And I suppose he wanted to copy me because I have a very high soprano voice, and I think that he, I suppose it's been good for him to actually do this play here in Los Angeles, really, in many ways. And to work with Lisa, because Lisa's, you know, she's off the charts, really. You know, she'll break all rules, which we have done because, you know, it's...
And he's such a purist,
yes,
Charles.
He's so purist, and it's been very good to work with a folk singer in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell people about the play and about what your expectations are for it?
Well, I better write another one.
Maybe
and
I
have started writing another one. Well, I should probably do the first one, but I really like the idea of writing one about a prisoner. And the prisoner stalks me. I get letters from him all the time, and I really wanted to tell his story, which is completely different.
Another true story?
It's a true story, yes.
Well, we'll be looking forward to that. Amanda, thank you very much.
Thank you as well, John.
And it's always a great pleasure to speak to you and hear what you have to say.
Yes.
So this has been A Few Words with Amanda Eliasch.
Yes.
And we hope you'll all go to see As I Like It, which is playing at the MACHA Theater. It's playing through January 15th. Showtimes are Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 8 p.m. and Sundays at 7 p.m. And on January 15th, the show will be at 3 p.m. You can find tickets at brownpapertickets.com, and you can also call for information at 323-969-1774. I'm John Allen Simon, here with Amanda Eliasch, and we hope you'll come see As I Like It, because we think you'll like it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.